Picture this. You've got a man so relentlessly ambitious, he literally becomes the most hated, ruthless monopolist in American history. But at the exact same time, he's so wildly generous that he gives away more money than anyone before him. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking the ultimate American paradox and the rise of the world's very first billionaire, John D. Rockefeller. $540 million. Let that number sink in for a second. That is the staggering amount John D. Rockefeller personally gave away during his lifetime. And remember, we're talking about money from over a century ago. So it begs the question, right? How does someone born into absolute freezing-in-the-winter poverty end up building a fortune so incomprehensibly massive that they can just hand over $500 million? Well, let's trace this journey right back to the bottom. Part 1. The Con Man's Son, From Poverty to Hustle. Back in 1839, young John was born into a family of peasant farmers. They lived in a crumbling house, wore tattered clothes, and frequently went to bed hungry. It is a stark, almost unbelievable contrast to the immense wealth he'd eventually have. But honestly, the real chaos of his childhood, that came straight from his parents. He basically had these two extreme, totally opposite forces shaping his brain. On one hand, you have his mother. She was a deeply religious, grounded woman who pounded strict discipline and a relentless work ethic into him. On the other hand, you've got his dad, famously known around town as Devil Bill. And yeah, Bill was a literal con artist. He lived this crazy double life peddling useless herbal potions and just abandoning the family for months on end. Because his dad was basically a ghost, John was forced to step up as the man of the house while he was still just a kid. He learned super early on that if you wanted to survive, you needed extreme, unrelenting discipline. And that pressure cooked up at an incredible hustle. I mean, at just 10 years old, he's raising and selling wild turkeys for profit just to help feed his family. By 16, he drops out of school entirely to land a bookkeeping job. And it wasn't easy. He faced 6 long weeks of rejections before someone finally took a chance on him. But that first job was a total game changer. It was his real business education, teaching him exactly how money flowed behind the scenes. Fast forward to age 23, right in the middle of the Civil War, and he's running his own produce business, clearing a massive $17,000 profit. He was driven by this one daily mantra that he'd repeat to himself every single morning before work: I am bound to be rich. Moving on to Part 2, Striking Black Gold, the Shift to Oil. You see, the produce business was honestly just a war-up. In the mid-1800s, this entirely new industry erupted out of nowhere, and it was going to make his wartime profits look like loose change in the couch cushions. They called it black gold. Crude oil had just been discovered in Pennsylvania. People figured out it could be cheaply pumped from the ground and refined into kerosene, which was revolutionary because it gave people a cheap way to light their homes. But the early days of the oil market, pure chaos. Boom towns would literally pop up overnight and then vanish just as fast. The supply was wildly unpredictable, which meant prices swung violently. We're talking anywhere from a dirt cheap 10 cents a barrel all the way up to $14 a barrel. It was a terrifying gambler's game. But here's the thing about Rockefeller. He did not gamble. He looked at the Wild West of oil drilling and approached it with cold, calculated logic. First, he and his business partner threw $4,000 into a small refinery on the side. Pretty quickly, he realized that refining the oil, actually chemically purifying it into usable kerosene, was way more stable and way more profitable than digging for it. So what does he do? He doubles down. He buys out his terrified partner for $72,500 and officially gives birth to Standard Oil.
Which brings us to Part 3, The Octopus Takes Control, Crushing the Competition. Once Standard Oil was off the ground, Rockefeller's entire mindset shifted. He wasn't just trying to build a successful business anymore, he was waging an all-out war. He saw that the market was way too volatile with all these random competitors running around. To survive and get the absolute wealth he dreamed of, he decided he had to brutally, methodically crush everyone else. His absolute secret weapon in this war? Railroad rebates. Think of a rebate like a super exclusive VIP discount. Rockefeller went to the major railroad companies and made them an offer they couldn't refuse: a guaranteed massive daily flow of oil shipments. But in exchange, he demanded a jaw-dropping 75% discount on his shipping costs. And the crazy part? His competitors had no clue. They were paying full price to ship their oil on the exact same trains. This gave Standard Oil a terrifying, almost unfair advantage, and Rockefeller built a ruthless playbook around it. Since his shipping costs were basically slashed to nothing, he could instantly trigger a price war. He'd drop his kerosene prices so incredibly low that his rivals had to sell at a loss just to keep the lights on. He would literally bleed them dry until they declared bankruptcy. Then, he'd swoop in, buy their ruined factories for pennies on the dollar, and once he owned the market again, boom, prices go right back up. This whole strategy peaked with the infamous Cleveland Massacre, where he swallowed up 22 of his 26 local competitors in just 6 weeks.
And the guy didn't even stop at railroads. To completely cut out his reliance on the train companies, he went ahead and built a massive, sprawling network of his own pipelines all across the eastern seaboard. This unyielding, expanding grip on the entire industry earned Standard Oil a pretty chilling nickname, the Octopus, because, like giant tentacles, his pipelines were everywhere, slowly squeezing the life out of anyone who even thought about competing.
All right, part 4, the steel rivalry, Rockefeller versus Carnegie. Total dominance in oil refining somehow wasn't enough for him. As the industry changed, Rockefeller's strategy evolved, and it ended up putting him on a direct collision course with the only other guy in America as powerful as he was.
So, Rockefeller decided to shift from horizontal integration, which is just buying up all the competing refiners, to vertical integration. Basically, he wanted the whole shebang, zero middlemen. He wanted to own the oil wells, the pipelines, the refineries, and the delivery wagons. For example, when a huge deposit of really foul-smelling skunk oil was discovered in Ohio, everybody else totally ignored it. But Rockefeller bought the land for pennies, hired a bunch of chemists to figure out how to fix the smell, and boom, suddenly he controlled a massive new supply chain, from the dirt directly to your living room lantern.
Now, this relentless expansion generated a mountain of cash, which led to a totally accidental, yet epic, turf war. Rockefeller needed places to park his spare millions, right? So on his team's advice, he buys up the Mesabi iron ore range up in Minnesota. Well, iron ore is the absolute key ingredient for making steel. So suddenly, Andrew Carnegie, the undisputed king of steel, looks over and realizes the king of oil is sitting on the largest, highest quality deposit of iron ore in North America. Rockefeller starts undercutting Carnegie's ore suppliers, and it triggers a massive clash between these two titans. But rather than burn each other to the ground, they eventually hashed out a mutually beneficial secret deal. But that deal caught the eye of the legendary Wall Street banker J.P. Morgan. Morgan wanted to merge everything together into one mega monopoly called U.S. Steel, so he asked Rockefeller for his price on those iron mines. Rockefeller casually sends his 27-year-old son, John Jr., to do the negotiating. And Jr. completely outplays the most powerful banker in America, forcing Morgan to pay an astronomical $88.5 million in U.S. Steel stock just for the mines. To put that in perspective, that's over $3 billion in today's money.
Part 5. Breaking the monopoly. The government strikes back. Because look, you cannot monopolize an entire country's energy supply, wipe out countless small businesses, and manipulate the railroads without making some incredibly powerful enemies along the way. The public was fed up, and a massive reckoning was on the horizon.
By the early 1900s, Standard Oil was sitting on a staggering 87% control of the American oil refining industry. And honestly, in some regions, it was a flat 100%. This wasn't capitalism or a free market anymore. This was basically John D. Rockefeller's private kingdom. And that glaring imbalance? It set the stage for one of the greatest legal showdowns in business history. The whole empire started to crack, thanks to a journalist named Ida Tarbell. Her own father's business had been destroyed by Rockefeller's tactics, and she unleashed a devastating series of articles exposing all of Standard Oil's dark history. The secret railroad deals, corporate espionage, you name it. The public was absolutely outraged. Riding that wave of anger, President Theodore Roosevelt launched a historic, all-out antitrust lawsuit. It took years of brutal legal battles and over 12,000 pages of evidence proving predatory pricing and corruption, but the Supreme Court finally struck the fatal blow. In 1911, after 41 years of total dominance, Standard Oil was ordered to dissolve into 34 completely separate companies. Which brings us to the final chapter, Part 6, The Billionaire's Legacy, The Two Rockefellers. On paper, it looked like the ultimate defeat. His life's work was shattered into pieces. But the aftermath of this historic lawsuit actually created the single most bizarre financial twist you could possibly imagine.
And here's the great irony of John D. Rockefeller. Getting his monopoly broken up by the government actually made him exponentially richer. Because he still owned about a quarter of the original monopoly, he was handed proportional shares in all 34 of the newly created independent companies. And right at that exact moment in history, the automobile industry was exploding, meaning the demand for gasoline went straight up. The value of those 34 new companies absolutely skyrocketed on the stock market, essentially tripling his wealth overnight and officially crowning him the world's very first billionaire.
So now, richer than any single person in human history, what does Rockefeller do? He fully pivots to giving it all away. He genuinely, truly saw himself as a soldier of God, sent to Earth and given money for the benefit of mankind. Through his philanthropic foundation, he systematically poured hundreds of millions of dollars into medicine and education. I mean, his funds practically built modern medical research in America, helping to eradicate diseases like hookworm and funding major universities all over the globe.
So we are left with this incredibly staggering paradox. On one side, you have a man who ruthlessly destroyed his competitors and engineered a totally illegal monopoly. But on the other side, he is one of the greatest benefactors of public health and education the world has ever seen. It really forces us to ask one final question. Can a legacy of unprecedented philanthropy ever truly erase a history of ruthless, monopolistic destruction? It's a wildly complex picture of ambition, power, and legacy. Keep questioning the history behind the headlines and use these lessons to understand the titans of our world today.